All right, folks, we are back. This is Yankees Unloaded. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. He is Gary Sheffield Jr. And today we got a lot to talk about. Some unfortunate events with the Astros. They did not get the deal done for Kyle Tucker. The Yankees did not get him. He's going to the Chicago Cubs. So we'll talk about that. Don't worry. Alex Bregman potentially is an option. So we're going to talk about that as well. We're really going to have to dive into Bregman. So we'll be doing that. They also did something. They had a move made, another pitcher, their third pitcher acquisition. No bats so far. Lost Juan Soto, have not replaced anything about him. But they did go out and get Devin Williams, who Gary called back in March. So round of applause for Gary Sheffield Jr. I know he's so embarrassed right now.
I've made a lot of predictions at this point. So obviously we've missed a lot, but we've hit on some of them. Garrett Crochet, I believe, was one of the other players I thought that could potentially be a Yankee. Didn't hit on that, so I'm trying to keep myself modest here. But I guess it definitely does sting, right? We'll just get out front of this. The Kyle Tucker news stinks. It's not good, right? We lose Juan Soto. You'd like to land on your feet and replace a bat who's very comparable to Juan Soto. Is he Juan Soto? No, but he's elite at a ton of different things. He has a cannon for an arm. He can run. Right? He obviously can hit. You know what he could do in Houston. The only thing for him to check right now is his clutch gene in October. So I can't say we dodged a bullet or anything like that. I think that'd be quite ridiculous. I was willing to take that risk with Tucker, see if he can figure it out in October. But Chicago gets a great player. I'm just scratching my head of what they're doing. Because right now, I think the obvious thing, Adames is out the division. They're thinking Milwaukee's going to take a step back. We need to go for it and prove to Kyle Tucker why he should be here for the next decade. So I like the aggressiveness, but obviously it's to our detriment.
No, I get it, man. I really, you got to give the Cubs credit for just getting it done. It's kind of like echoing what Ariel said on the show. I mean, they beat you. They won. Give them their props. Don't hate on them. It is annoying because I don't know what the Cubs are going to do except maybe package him at the trade deadline. But aside from that, give them credit for trying to make a move. Give him credit for trying to make a move, and that's really all you can say. But we got a fun show for you guys. We're going to be talking about, I did a video earlier, but we'll talk about Devin Williams a little bit. We'll talk about Bregman. There's a lot of concerns about Bregman being, and I don't love the comparison, but being a potential Ellsbury-esque signing. And I think really it's just more so based on the time Ellsbury was signed after Cano left. And so then people are saying, well, the pivot from Soto to Bregman feels very, but there's some things I want to talk about with him. Tucker, we won't get too much into. He's not a Yankee. It's not an option. I will say this. I do think if he gets outside into the free agency world, the Cubs don't put the money up there. They don't bring him back. He's going to be a Yankee. I really believe that. I think they will put out the stops, and they will give him the money. Now, they might have to outbid the Dodgers, which won't be easy, but free agency isn't supposed to be easy. It's why all the time, Max Fried his eye wasn't on the Yankees. He was looking at other teams. The Yankees came up, and they had to really persuade him. That is free agency. So it won't be easy, but I do think next year they'll get him. But we're talking about here and now, because I understand this. The AL is not as good as it used to be. And by the way, the AL just got worse with Kyle Tucker leaving, but that's neither.
The AL is atrocious. But obviously, even if we get through the American League, you still have to win the World Series. I don't think anyone would be satisfied if we make it to another World Series and get pummeled the way we did. And obviously, in the way that we lost, it was frankly pathetic. Yeah. Obviously, we weren't very fundamental. We couldn't cover bases. We couldn't run the bases. We had no idea. Seemingly, we got embarrassed on national airwaves. So as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to Kyle Tucker, he was everything we needed, and it is what it is. I think the one thing I wanted to talk about, rather than talking about the player, I want to talk about the deal. I want to talk about the negotiations, because that was the thing that was most compelling to me, was hearing from Jack Curry, Brian Cashman is going to do everything he can to get this done. And yet we never heard Luis Gil was part of a trade package. Now, this may come out in the coming days that Luis Gil, in fact, was. But based on what we're hearing now, Luis Gil was being held back. And matter of fact, George Lombard Jr. was also held back. So what's so interesting
That's weird to me.
Which players exactly were available to the Houston Astros? Because people have been telling me all week, and rightfully so, Houston's not going to send Kyle Tucker to the Yankees. Well, why don't you find that out and put your best prospects forward, put all your chips to the center of the table and see what they do? The Yankees never did that. So it seems like the Yankees sort of held back their best players. And the point that you brought up is that perhaps the Yankees didn't want to throw Luis Gil out there to make him feel like he's trade piece. I saw his post today, by the way, saying that he was thankful to be a Yankee, rightfully so. But as far as I'm concerned, Brian Cashman, this seems like a miss to me. I can't say for sure we would have gotten the player if we put Luis Gil out there, but I'm not just going to chalk it up to their owner not wanting to deal with the Yankees when, frankly, we threw scraps to the guy and acted like a deal was going to get done. That Chicago deal was always going to beat ours if we didn't come to play.
Yeah, Chicago was willing to step up and offer, one of their first round picks, actually in just the most recent draft, and offer Isaac Paredes, who I told you off air. I think he's a little overrated for me. I get the measurables are great, the numbers are great, all that, but I do think that people go a little too crazy with the analytics. And is Paredes, a player that's maybe coveted the same way in the 80s or 90s? I don't know. I think in the realm of the analytics, today you can turn on Baseball Savant, which we use all the time. So I'm not trying to say it's not worth anything, but he's a Baseball Savant guy. How great of a player is he? I think he gets a little overblown. So they also sent former Yankee pitcher Hayden Wesneski as well in that wacky trade that the Yankees sent him to the Cubs for to go out and get Efros. So, I mean, Efros somehow lasted on the Yankees longer than Wesneski lasted on the Cubs. Put that on your bingo card. Never would have expected that. But I think right now, what people want to know, because, it's a bummer they got, outdone, right? But people want to know, where do they go from here? And to me, I put it in our thumbnail. This is plan C. Plan A was Soto and whatever. Plan B was, it came out of nowhere, but it was Kyle Tucker. And now plan C is kind of what they had the idea all along, going after Cody Bellinger. And now I don't know if I buy any of the reports with Bregman. I'm seeing Alonso. I know Alonso wants to be a Yankee over being a Met. That continues to be out there. I believe that. But I don't necessarily think that the Yankees have as much interest in Alonso as maybe what's being put out there. I think they'd be more likely to go with Christian Walker. But I also want to say this, Gary. I don't know if we're going to see any dominoes drop really outside of, Cody Bellinger, because I think the biggest one is the one we're not really talking about. And that's Roki Sasaki, who the Yankees feel they have a shot with. And as long as they feel they have a shot at this point in time, well, Gary, here's the deal. Roki Sasaki, okay, if they meet with him, they have international pool money. I know they signed a 17-year-old today, and some people were concerned by that, but apparently that was the previous. They have it now, whatever. They have international pool money for Sasaki and Hyseong Kim, who we talked about, right? If Sasaki wants to sign and you go out and you get Kyle, or whoever, right? You're using international pool money to sign a Christian Walker. Like you're going to have that penalized essentially based on the fact it's a qualifying offer, right? That's how I understand it. That's what I've been seeing. So I think that has a lot to do with it, Gary, in that they're really they're in it and they're really choosing to stay in it with Sasaki, because if they weren't, I feel like they would have already signed Christian Walker. And I think right now, the teams that had those qualifying offers, those guys that have those qualifying offers, it's what's holding up all of these deals from being made. I think once Sasaki and that domino gets knocked down, then we're going to start to see a Bregman, a Teo Hernandez, a lot of these guys sign. But the qualifying offer guys signing right now seems like it's in flux, and it's because of the Sasaki deal.
Okay, so here's the issue I have. Thinking about Roki Sasaki, obviously this is a great player for anyone to sign because you're talking about a dude who's under the age of 25, right? This isn't a dude that has a huge track record. Everybody knows the talent. We saw it at the World Baseball Classic. Everyone wants this guy. Mets are going to be taking meetings. The Dodgers are expected to land him. The Yankees want him. Reality is his signing window is still 20-some days away. And by that point, all your other options may have dried up. So I would really hate to see a team that thinks they're a contender in 2025 holding their plans off, waiting for somebody who may or may not choose them. And frankly, you can't be the highest bidder on them because we're talking about international money here. Nobody's throwing $400 million at this kid. You're talking about marginal money in comparison. So it's really a matter of where he wants to play for the foreseeable future. This is not a free agency signing. So again, guys, when it comes to Bregman or Cody Bellinger, Christian Walker, you don't want to sit on your hands and wait around because Christian Walker and his agency might say, we're not going to wait around for the Yankees. We saw what happened last year with Scott Boras. We saw what happened with Blake Snell. We saw what happened with Cody Bellinger, who was expecting an 8-year deal, ended up with a 2 or 3-year deal. Free agency signings are wonky. They always have been. And the teams that really want to win, just get your business done early. So I want to move this on to Alex Bregman because I think Bregman right now, most people expect Cody Bellinger to sort of domino his way to us. And rightfully so. I think there's a fit there. He could play first. He could play outfield. Great fit. But Alex Bregman's the interesting player here because I'm actually going to go against the grain. I think people are starting to open up to this opportunity and open up to the idea of him being a Yankee in general. I don't hate the player. Obviously, he was clutch in October, his last few years in October baseball. But there are a couple things that have concerned me about this player. And it's not availability. It's none of that. Okay. When I look at Alex Bregman's numbers at Fangraphs. Thank you for Fangraphs for bringing these numbers to our attention. If you look at the damage that Bregman does, it is predominantly to the pull side. Last year, he hit 367 to the pull side. He hit 310 to the center of the field. To right field, he hit 200. Okay. Now, is this the end of the world? Probably not, given it's always a given of where you're playing. But if you told me there was going to be a baseball player that we're signing who's going to come to Yankee Stadium as a right-handed hitter, and you tell me, yeah, he's worst when he goes the other way, well, why exactly am I throwing $150 to $200 million at said player? Because that's not making sense to me. Here's another stat. Jake, when do we like our players to hit? Is it low leverage, medium, or high leverage situations? You'd probably answer
Obviously
we'd like to
high.
see medium and high being better. The tighter the situation, the better you get. You would love to see that. I think most people in our chat would agree. Well, in low leverage, he hit 276 last year. Very good. His numbers were spectacular. He hit 13 homers. Obviously, the most at bats in that situation, 133 games. Medium leverage, he took 214 at bats. He hit 257. Not bad at all. But here's what's concerning. High leverage situations, he hit 182. Okay. Now I understand for people who are saying, well, let's pump the brakes on these numbers. It's small sample size. No, this is a large sample size. It is. So Alex Bregman, I'm sure being at third base, obviously he's at his home position. It's going to be a defensive upgrade. It just will be. The Yankees will be more fundamental with him at third, moving Jazz Chisholm back to second base. But I think there's a more natural way to go about this. I don't think it's Alex Bregman. I think it is too much money in his pile to possibly get an upgrade that's this marginal. I don't think Bregman is enough of an upgrade to go this route. So really like the dude. This is a great guy, great locker room guy. Obviously, we know the story about Houston. I don't see it. I don't. And I see Bohm in the chat. I told you about Bohm a couple weeks ago, Jake.
You did.
I think Bohm would be a much better fit for the Yankees, but we haven't really heard any rumblings of that. Obviously, this is coming via trade. So yeah, I don't know about Bregman. I think Cody Bellinger is just a better overall fit for the team needs that we have right now.
No, I agree with that. Cody Bellinger, I feel like has to happen.
Right.
He's first off, I mean, he's the younger option. I think Christian Walker, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. He's 34. This is right around the time Rizzo hit the absolute wall. Now, I think he's in better shape than Rizzo, but like how long is he? Because at that point, you're signing another DH, and he's going to be a 3-4 year guy. You know, that's not ideal. So, you know, I think that when you look at that, I think what's important here is that Alec Boehm, like you were just discussing, he's also another young guy. He's 28. You know, Cody Bellinger, you know, he's 29, I believe. I'm trying to keep this away from like 34, 35 years old. And I understand the desire to want to go all in, but what they can't do is just stop, like, in my opinion anyway, you can't just start throwing money at guys and be like all panicky, okay? There's a lot more to it than that. There are different options. I think they should call up the Padres. I think they should ask, realistically, is there any chance at Fernando Tatis Jr.? That's what I would do. It's not panic. I'm just asking, like, are you interested? Because I have the prospects. I would trade Heel for him, all that. If they say no, then I move on to Arraez. Is Arraez available? Because I'm hearing that you're listening on these guys. Is he really available? Arraez can play the infield. He's not the greatest defender ever, but you're getting, I would say, a diet Tony Gwynn. I mean, he's a really good hitter, but Tony Gwynn is just, I mean, he's like the best. So it's hard to say you're getting Tony Gwynn, but Arraez is going to hit 300 plus.
I mean, if
every
people
single
call
year.
you, yeah, right. So obviously in the chat, we see Jeremy saying he's a terrible defender. In my opinion, if you're going to bring Arraez, and obviously I think the fit offensively is actually better than the fit offensively we had from Gleyber Torres last year. I thought Gleyber felt a little redundant as far as what he likes to do, as far as what this team does well. Arraez is more of the flavor offensively we're looking for. But yeah, defensively, if you're looking to get more fundamental, more defensively savvy, Arraez is not your guy, right? He's
probably
just going to stand over there.
But right now there's a gaping hole in left field, and he has played there before. And I think that's
left field at
where
Yankee Stadium is tough. So I don't know if I throw anybody out there.
It is, but I mean, maybe you make the decision. I don't know. I'm just saying, I think they need to go out and get somebody of that caliber. Alec Boehm is going to hit 280. You know, right. He's going to be flirting around the 800 OPS, and he's going to add 15 to 20 home runs. He's a righty though. Like, this is the thing, is you're getting into, this guy's a righty, this guy's a righty. And of course you trade away Durbin, so you did kind of create a hole for yourself. Now, at the same time, I also want to bring this up. We talked about this, and I really want to bring this up. I think, and we fell for it. So, ultimate, great job by the Yankees PR, because Caleb Durbin is 25 years old. He has never played in the big leagues. He is not in the top 30 prospects, and they had us believing that he was going to play in this lineup. And guess what?
You really think they had no idea? Or do you think that was just a blatant lie? Because it was pushed by multiple people.
Blatant lie.
I mean, that was insane. All we saw were articles and people showing up to yes. Oh, they can't wait. Odds on favorite. He's going to be there. He's going to play. Why'd they say that now? And then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 days later, this player's in a deal. They had to have known. It's crazy.
They knew. And I mean, this is the game, right? Like, this is the game. And I said it the other day, I was like, they've done a really nice job of keeping him quiet. Now they're talking him up. I said the quiet part out loud. How did I not pick up on this? Like, of course, there's always a reason. I think, genuinely speaking, when you look at last year, the guy who I keep forgetting his name, but the guy they traded.
You're talking about the catcher?
Yes, the guy who.
Yeah, I have no idea what his name is.
Yeah, we talked Agustin Ramirez. The guy, like literally, I think he just became too big to cover up. I don't think they wanted to trade Agustin Ramirez, but when they went to the Marlins for Jazz, they're like, oh, you're not getting away with like what you're giving us Agustin Ramirez, and the Yankees had no choice. But I think in this case, they definitely pushed and they kind of manufactured a market for Caleb Durbin, who, by the way, was never mentioned before in trade talks, ever. And all of a sudden he goes from never being mentioned to he's part of a deal that just comes about out of the blue? No.
Can I ask you a question? Because this is widely pertaining to the analytics of Cody Bellinger. Because I know we just talked about the fit, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about a guy defensively, massive upgrade defensively over Rizzo at first base, or take your pick. If you really want him to play left field, he can do that. He obviously played corner outfield with the Dodgers. And we're talking about a dude, when you look at his baseball savant page, we try not to overdo the analytics, but when you look up baseball savant and you see somebody blue in every single category offensively, other than square up percentage and chase rate, then I feel like it's at least responsible to ask some questions there. And the question really is, do you read into the analytics? Because for me personally, I tend to go away from this because I feel like the analytics have let us down with a few players this year. I think Clay Holmes was one of them. I think Alex Verdugo was another. You look at Alex Verdugo and you'd think, wow, offensively really wasn't so bad in 2024. I think it was widely overstated if you were on the outside looking in. But if you were a Yankees fan and you watched Alex Verdugo play baseball, baseball savant didn't do you a damn thing. It meant nothing. And honestly, when I watched Verdugo, there was a 3-month span where I thought I can just go to the bathroom now. This at bat's over. This inning is over, and rightfully so. But yet a piece of paper tells me that it's not so bad. Well, Cody Bellinger, it's really the same story. So yeah, I'm curious to your personal opinion on this because I want to ignore this sheet of blue. I think Cody Bellinger would be perfect in pinstripes.
I do too. And I'm just going to get to Slim Lewis here. Thank you for the 5. Bregman plus Bellinger do not seem like additions that will get us a World Series win. Both are declining. Nico Horner would help. He kills left-hand pitching and plays great D. Here's the deal with Nico Horner. I actually think he's a great fit. And I think they should probably pivot to him and Bellinger and just get that all done in one fell swoop over, paying Bregman. Because first off, I don't want them to go back and deal with Scott Boras. I don't. I think it sends a bad message. What he did was not a faithful negotiation. What a lot of people don't know, because it wasn't exactly broadcasted all that well, but there were reports out there that the Yankees put in the final offer and they offered the most money. And the Mets came back and they went to the Mets and said, this is the final offer that the Yankees had. Can you do better? And they did much better. And the Yankees never had a chance to match that. Now, I'm not saying they have to, but to me, that's not dealing in good faith, because I'm not saying the Yankees would have, right? I'm not. But I do want to address this because I think it sets a bad message where, yeah, you're just going to let this agent walk all over you. He took away Soto in a sense. Obviously, Soto had his own thing, but he took away Soto in a sense. So you also have to be aware of the fact that you're in this position as well because you spent that time and you didn't get him, right? So the last thing I want them to do is go back to the discussion table with Scott Boras and sit there as he drags you around and uses you and potentially takes you for all you have with Bregman, who might not be worth the deal that you end up with at the end of the day, but maybe even worse, takes your eyes off the ball for other guys and then rug pulls you and he ends up going to the Boston Red Sox or something, because I wouldn't put it past him. All he cares about is helping his client. That's it. But he doesn't care if it's done in a faithful way, right? So that's the thing that I look at, is that the Yankees can either deal with another Scott Boras client or they can try and be like, you know what? the Cubs, you want us to take on all that money? Because right now that's the holdup with Cody Bellinger. Fine. Give us Nico Horner, and we're not giving you another prospect. That's what we need. That's our demand. You want us to take on that money? Include Nico Horner. And that's what I would do.
Yeah, and the threat, by the way, Jake, is that really the only threat to the Yankees, because people are talking about the holdup being, first of all, Slim, thank you for the super chat. Yeah. When you're talking about $53 million being the holdup for Bellinger, and people will say, well, if we end up taking all of that money, financially, you're clearing the books for Kyle Tucker to potentially be re-signed. Well, in my opinion, the only threat is him signing mid-season. If he gets to free agency, the Yankees just have to look at it and say, well, now all bets are off. All of these free agents, if we're the highest bidder or something significant, we should expect this guy to be a client. And that's the way it goes. But if you're going to tell me that Cody Bellinger and $53 million is going to be the reason you don't get this player, now you want to pivot to Christian Walker. Well, I don't blame our chat for thinking, hey, I don't necessarily think a couple of these guys are the difference between us going to where we're going to go and winning a World Series or getting there. I don't blame you. I think in general, that Kyle Tucker move was huge for us. It was gigantic. And now you're going to have to get really creative. And that's not the free agency market. That is via trade. Well, one thing that Brian Cashman has shown last year, he did something with Juan Soto. He took a risk. He sent Michael King to San Diego. A lot of people said, what are you doing? We would love to have Michael King on this roster. And they're absolutely right. But with Michael King on this roster, there is no Juan Soto. There's no berth to the World Series. Not even close. As bad as that AL was, we probably still don't beat Cleveland. And that's ridiculous to say. But the reality is that you need guys who can hit in October to win. Yes, pitching is important. Hitting is more important. You've got to be able to hit. And for those of you who have watched Yankees baseball, we have failed to score in October. I cannot tell you how many times. So as far as I'm concerned, I think Nico Horner would be a great fit. You look at the back of his baseball card, you see he hit 302 in 2021, 281, 283, 273. His baseline is to be an all-around player, more athletic, much better defensive player at second base. And frankly, we've got to get better defensively. I know it's hard to go into free agency and look at the trade market and say, oh, I like that guy's glove, because it doesn't feel sexy like Yankees baseball. But when you watch a ground ball pitcher like Max Fried spin a gem 7-8 innings, and he's getting ground ball after ground ball, and you're no longer watching Gleyber Torres try to roll double plays anymore. It's now Nico Horner and Jazz Chisholm, or Anthony Volpe and Jazz Chisholm. You're seeing a difference in baseball. It looks pretty. That's what we're really going to care about. We're going to care about winning. And sometimes, guys, you would much rather get the big sexy pickup in Kyle Tucker, but sometimes you need to just get better as a unit and say, we are awful defensively. Who can be a huge defensive upgrade? I think that defensive upgrade right now can come in bulk. Cody Bellinger, Nico Horner, you get those two done. And frankly, you just pray to God that Kyle Tucker gets to free agency in 2025 in the winter, and you go win that sweepstakes. No excuses whatsoever. I don't want to hear that they didn't give you a final offer. You go win that. So if you're going to tell me we're going to let Vladdy Jr. go, we want someone who's a great fit, who can be an all-around baseball player. Kyle Tucker would be that guy. We won't have an excuse to pull out next year.
No, I agree with that. And I think, when it comes to Nico Horner, because he's been mentioned before, and I was like, I don't know. I like Caleb Durbin. Caleb Durbin's gone. So now I'm open to this. That's really what happened. I'm totally open to this. I didn't want to move Jazz to second, and I still don't. I think it would be a waste. So I like having a second baseman there. I like getting Nico Horner. This is a guy who's in the 88th percentile for fielding run value on Savant.
So our defense would be sensational. You're talking about Bellinger at first base, who's very athletic. This is a guy who can steal you 20 bags. So you're talking about Horner, Volpe, and Jazz. That is
Horner stole 43 2 years ago.
Right. So it's athleticism central. Now, is it offensively everything you could ask for? Probably not. It's not the 2009 Yankees. But you've got to be great at something if you're going to be on the Yankees. You can't be a mediocre hitter, and then I don't want the ball hit to you as well. There were a couple players on the Yankees you're like, I don't really want the ball hit to him, but he's supposed to be a good hitter, but he's also hitting 230. So right? Like, we can't have that situation happen again in 2025. Slim, again with the super, we appreciate it. It says, are the Yankees saving money for next winter to get in either with Tucker or Vladdy? I could see the deadline, Tucker at the deadline. The Cubs suck. So Slim, again, thank you so much for the super. I'm going to answer this directly. I have zero, and I mean zero, Slim, faith that Brian Cashman is going to take a risk acquiring a big-time bat at the deadline. And the reason for that, it's not that I'm picking on him. It's not that I don't like him personally. It's that I've never seen him make a big-time splash at the deadline. Most often, when you see Brian Cashman make a big pickup, Giancarlo Stanton, right? Anytime you see that type of stuff happen, it is in the winter. It is when you can be calculated. It is when you can take your time. It is when you can surprise people. But you know one thing, Slim, that no one talks about when it comes to Brian Cashman? He usually doesn't win the trade when everyone's after the player. He usually gets the player when no one's looking at the Yankees. The Yankees slip a guy a prospect. Oh, we'll take the contract. Don't worry about it. And now that player ends up in pinstripes. But you know who's going to be after Kyle Tucker next deadline? If the Cubs, by the way, because the Cubs, they're still trying to buy. They're still trying to win that division. If they take a step back and Kyle Tucker's playing well and we're on the cusp in a battle again with Baltimore, do you know who's going to be after Kyle Tucker?
The Mets.
Literally everybody, Jake. Literally everybody. The Mets, the Dodgers, right? The San Diego Padres may be looking at a 1-year rental to try to go for it again, right? They felt they should have beat the Dodgers this year. Let's put Kyle Tucker on the line in the lineup, see if we can get over the hump. Let them walk this offseason. The Padres have shown that they're willing to do that. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen. What I'm saying, there are going to be 6 to 7 teams in that sweepstakes. I rarely ever see the Yankees involved with a player with 6 to 7 teams in the mix and the Yankees come out on top. They like to sneak their picks. They like to sneak their trades. And frankly, Slim, I'm not waiting for the deadline for anything. If I see a great team on the field in 2025, I'm looking for a finished product coming into the season. Maybe outside of an arm in the bullpen, but you look at our bullpen now, that's the least of our concerns. I think we've done a lot out there. So yeah, I'm not holding my breath for any deadline moves.
No, and that's fair. Definitely fair. I saw someone mention Marcus Semien. He's 34. So I'm out on him. But Horner is not represented by Boris Corp. I know someone said that Cody is. I don't need to sign Cody to a deal though. Like, that's the difference, is that I don't really want to be in a negotiation with Scott Boras. And if you go about this the right way and you actually set an example and you say, look, you can't walk all over us and then expect us to come running back to you and negotiate with you. Guess what? Kyle Tucker isn't Boris Corp, right? And that's the thing. So they don't have to deal with him. There are plenty of players in this league that are not represented by Scott Boras. Casey Close, there are plenty of them. And so that's ultimately how I look at it, is that I don't think the Yankees should have to feel like they have to do that. You mentioned Alec Boehm. We've talked about Nico Horner. I've seen another guy come up, not at second base, but Nathaniel Lau. What are your thoughts on him? Because he continues to come up in conversation, for the Yankees as a first base option. And I guess really the question I have for the Yankees would be, who, by the way, is not represented by Boris Corp either. I guess the question I would have is, so Nathaniel Lau, this is a guy that if you get him, you could also get Bellinger and just play Bellinger in left field. Like, that's certainly possible, because I think they're getting Bellinger for the left-handed bat more than anything. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on Lau? That essentially you could be looking at a 4th year of arbitration in 2026. You'd have 2 years of control based on that, depending on how things go. He's 29 years old. I personally don't hate it, but I'm not exactly like advocating for it. I'm just asking you because I keep seeing his name mentioned.
I think it's a bit underwhelming. I think after
it is underwhelming,
yeah, I feel like looking at a couple of our options, I think given the strengths and weaknesses of all these players, and they all have them, there's a reason they didn't sign $300 million deals. Frankly, you can find something wrong with all these players. You can look at Nathaniel Lau and say, well, he stole 2 bases last year. I thought the Yankees wanted to get more athletic, right? Cody Bellinger can give you 20 bags in a year. Cody Bellinger can go first to third. He's the type of guy, you have an injury for a couple weeks, you could throw him in left field, center field, defensive replacement, defensive switch. Cody Bellinger is the type of dude. Listen, I went to high school with this kid. He played first base when he was early on in high school. He was in right field. The kid just played everywhere. He just could. If he was right-handed, you could throw him at short. And that ends up materializing at the big league level. So I just think Cody Bellinger gives the Yankees more options. It doesn't necessarily stalemate people in one position. And we've seen a lot of that in Yankees baseball, right? Giancarlo Stanton, frankly, is an absolute plug as a designated hitter, which is, there's nothing wrong with it as long as you're producing offensively. But do we necessarily want to bring somebody on the team who has to anchor at a certain position? And I personally don't want to do that. I think he's a fine player. It's just not the right time. I think the Yankees right now, if you're going to sell me that we're still going for it in 2025, we brought in Max Fried, not to just compete. We're bringing him in here for a pennant race and to win a World Series. Well, then the position players that you replace Juan Soto with are going to have to be substantial. They're going to have to be able to, obviously, you look at his on-base percentage, hovering in the mid-360s, very nice, right? Ops 762, very comparable. But the reality is I'm looking for highly quality bats. I'm looking for guys who have a ceiling that they can get to. We've seen Cody Bellinger's ceiling. It's MVP, right? That's his ceiling. And we're hoping that there's a little bit of a resurgence there coming from Chicago, going to New York. Obviously, we know the stories of the labrum, right? Celebrating in the World Series, which really sort of derailed Cody there for a couple years. But he started to rebound. And to be honest with you, I feel like this is sort of a capped out move where we know where the ceiling is and it's not high. So I think Nathaniel Lau can help the Yankees. There's no question about that. The numbers speak for themselves. But I don't think there's room for growth in this player the same way that I see in Cody Bellinger.
Shout out John Coley. Thank you for the 5 there.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate you. Armando Gomez, what do you think of Brian Hayes for third? I actually haven't really even heard that name mentioned yet. So basically, he is the opposite of a wet dream on Baseball Savant. He's got a 2 batting run value, a negative 21, 2 percentile.
Okay.
78 percentile fielding. I don't know. I think he's just kind of just a guy. I mean, here's the thing. I'm not in the business of just getting a guy just to get a guy. Like, if it gets to the point where I have to play Oswaldo Cabrera at third, I might just be fine with that. I'm not playing Brian Hayes there. You know what I mean?
Can I put this back on the screen so I can answer it myself? And I actually have some numbers here because I thought I had a feeling because remember, I'm a baseball fan. I don't just watch Yankees baseball. Yeah. I'll tell you right now, for those of you who know about this player, those of you who know about this team, this guy received a Aaron Hicks like extension, right? Early. Let's get ahead of this. He's the future. Let me tell you something. If I trade for a player who hit 233 last year, you think I'm paying from 2025 to 2027, $7 million a year on a player who's already on the decline. Now, this may improve, but the Yankees baseball in win now mode, we're not taking a $7 million risk on this player. And hold on a second, Jake, it gets worse. In 2028 to 2029, we pay him $8 million. And then we have a club option in 2030 for $12 million with a $6 million buyout. Absolutely not. Never. Okay. If the Yankees are trading for somebody, they need to be one of many things. They need to be cheap, controllable, or highly talented and performing. Okay. Alex Bregman, I know a lot of people say, well, he's not cheap. Can't we go to the cheaper option? Sure. But Alex Bregman also had a very strong second half last year, which made a lot of organizations feel, oh, that's the player we're going to get in 2025. So they're hoping for that. I can see it, right? I can see the vision why somebody would pay $20-some million a year. Brian Hayes, there is no way in the world I am taking a risk on a player who just did this, and I'm paying you almost $10 million. that would be crazy to me.
No, I appreciate Armando. And a reminder, this is just our thoughts. We're not ripping you personally.
No, God, no.
I mean, maybe some other podcasts might do that, but we're not doing that.
No, it's the performance of the player that would terrify me, because seeing a player hit 233 and saying, well, maybe he'll take his jump with the Yankees, but it's not going to be a cheap risk. If I'm taking a risk, that bad boy better be cheap, or Pittsburgh better be telling me, and we know Pittsburgh, they are not taking that contract. They are not going to do that. So yeah, Armando, unless Pittsburgh is like, hey, we're bailing on that deal, I don't think I want to see Hayes at third base. I think that's a risk I'll leave on the sidelines.
So I know this would be probably the worst time to trade for him because his value was so high. This was his best year, but Katel Marte would be really good at second. And
you don't think there's an opportunity for that to happen?
I mean, is there? Yeah, but here's the thing. He's 31, which doesn't bother me. It's like just signing somebody in free agency. But looking at his contract, Gary, like $16 million a year, he's some of the best value you're going to find in the league. He's honestly the best value second baseman for guys that have already been paid, of course, not guys that are on arbitration. I mean, when you look at this deal, like, I don't know why Arizona would trade him. But Katel Marte,
is he actually on the block? Because I know for a fact, I don't want to speak for you.
Thrown around, yeah.
He's been thrown around because I know they're throwing around their rotation, right? Zach Gallen.
I feel like a lot of people are doing that.
Right. A lot of people, I think it's because of how expensive guys are in free agency, and rightfully so. These pitchers are getting ridiculous. Max Fried just is the richest left-handed pitcher of all time now. So
that's crazy.
He got the biggest singular deal. It's a lot of money. So now I understand it, but Katel Marte hit 292 last year, guys.
36 bombs. He literally, his OPS from 22 to now, you get this, 22, 728 OPS. The next year, 843. The next year, 932. This guy's like on his way up to the stairway to heaven. Like, he's just getting better and better each year. 12, 25, 36 home runs. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, his on-base percentage,
if you take away 2022, they're probably covering him as a star. 2022 was a disaster, and he ended up resurging in the second half and hitting 240. Without that season, you're looking at a player who hit 290, roughly 290, 320, 280, 295. Okay. That's a player who doesn't strike out. He's not really going to walk, right? He's not going to take his walks. Defensively, he can play anywhere. I don't know for any of you guys who play the show. Is it good?
Dude, 97th percentile expected OBA, right?
Okay.
96th percentile expected batting average. 96th percentile expected slugging. 98th percentile average exit velocity. 84th percentile barrel percentage. 96th percentile hit percentage, hard hit percentage. 89th percentile squared up percentage, 85th percentile walk percentage. Everything is in the red, at least a little bit of the red. All of it, except for the swing spot, the sweet spot percentage, launch angle. He's at 42%. I don't give a rip about that.
Okay. So, is this a player? What would you be willing to put on the line? Because you have to imagine the Yankees are trying to find a way. I saw it in the chat earlier, and then I'm going to get to Luis's super chat about this risk on Luis Roberts, because very interesting. I'm curious, how aggressive are people expecting the Yankees to be? Because you have to remember, if we sign somebody to a big contract and let's just say make the Yankees a lot better, I have a feeling that also would frustrate people at the same time, because when Kyle Tucker becomes a free agent, people are going to look at them and say, oh, well, I thought we wanted to save money for this player. He's the perfect fit. So I'm just so interested in how this is going to work out, because Brian Cashman is in the short term going to look like he's cheap or that he's not properly spending money. You look at Cody Bellinger and say, why won't you take the $53 million? Then next offseason, people are going to say, we should have taken the $53 million and been the highest bidder on Tucker. I don't know if Hal Steinbrenner is willing to do both. So that's the real question here, is how do the Yankees get better without taking on such a high payroll. And Katel Marte, by the way, not highly paid. He signed one of those Aaron Hicks contracts.
Get this. Barely more than DJ LeMahieu and Gleyber Torres got last year.
So is he around 16 million?
15.2 last year.
Okay, so we're close.
So he got paid $200,000 more than DJ LeMahieu, and DJ LeMahieu basically did nothing all year. I don't know. To me, he's 31 years old, and I just see him. He's newly 31 years old. He's actually, his birthday is the day after mine, October 12th. So he's going to go a full season being 31. So he's not that old. No. In addition to that, baseball-wise, guys, don't get offended. We're talking sports. Like, obviously, I don't think 31's ever old.
We've got some listeners in their 60s.
Yeah. But anyway, point being here, if he's available for that, like, and this is where it becomes interesting, right? Why would the Diamondbacks get rid of him? Why would the Yankees give up a ton for a 31-year-old, right? But at the same time, it's like, just when you feel like it's going that way, oh, he's 31, it's not going to cost that much. It is going to cost that much because his deal just works so well. If you're paying $16 million to that level of player with a club option in 2018 at age 34, right?
Oh, 2028, you mean?
Yeah, age 34 in 2028.
Okay.
He has escalators.
3 years. Okay.
Yeah, he has escalators in his contract. If he finishes in the top 3 MVP race, he gets $3 million. If he finishes 4th through 7th, he gets $2 million. But this is a great deal to take on. So if they could, I might really be interested in this one. But with Soto's, well, first off, I want to hear what you say about that, what I just presented to you, and then we'll get into Luis Soto's super chat.
That contract, in my opinion, is worth top prospects. So whatever you think about Katel Marte,
I agree.
Katel Marte's money, just like Jose Ramirez. So 2 years ago, Jose Ramirez was on the block. And people said, well, what are they going to do with this player? He's highly underrated. Nobody knows about him. We all know about him. But people were drawing the conclusion that this player, he might be worth more than literally Shohei Ohtani or any other player in the big leagues. It's not because of talent. It's not because of production. We're going to pay a player of this caliber. We're not paying him $40 million a year. Oh, he's making $16 million a year. How valuable is that to a contender? Imagine the Los Angeles Dodgers, for example, acquiring a player. We know that they're willing to spend any amount of money. They acquire a superstar. Katel Marte is not necessarily a superstar. He is probably that tier below, highly productive. And as far as I'm concerned, this is potentially, I haven't heard a ton about this. This is a move that the Yankees might be able to cash in prospects, right? You're talking about the Lombards, the Heels, and you send a player, all the players you got, and you bring someone who is controllable, cheap, and effective, and athletic, and defensively, he's going to be superior to what we've had in place currently. I'll tell you right now,
by the way.
Exactly. Will keep us in the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes. So you're talking about, yes, getting rid of prospects. That sucks. But you're bringing in a great player while maintaining being cheap enough to go after Kyle Tucker next year. Haven't heard a ton about this. This could just simply be speculation that never happens. But I'm just thinking out loud, guys. And that's what this podcast is. We're not going to sit there and refresh Twitter all day long. Sometimes we're going to think of our own ideas and kind of talk ourselves into certain things. The Diamondbacks are claiming, yeah, we're sort of sellers. We're trying to figure out ways to get some prospects, right, to build our farm system. We feel like we went for it. We fell a little short in the World Series to the Rangers. Well, if we're going to send you a player like Luis Gil or Lombard Jr. or potentially a Spencer Jones, yeah, Katel Marte would be highly valuable. And to answer Luis Soto's super chat, Luis, thank you very much. I'm sorry for the wait. Said maybe time to consider an all-in on Luis Roberts. So again, he has a high ceiling. There's no question about that. But again, it's all dependent on how Chicago is feeling about this player. Because if they're going to give up on said player, right, you just traded away Crochet, I highly doubt, based on what we heard essentially all year long in 2024, is that they still believe in this guy to have a resurgence, right? And if they believe that, it's going to take top prospects. Am I willing to take something that we would call a high ceiling player, but we just saw what he did in 2024? I can't possibly, in good faith, give you top prospects for a guy who can play like that for a year and a half. I can't do it. So I like that the wheels are turning. I think it's a good idea. I probably would have accepted this risk had Crochet been part of the trade and he's just a part of that. But given that it's now going to be a solo trade, Luis, I'm going to stay away from it.
It's weird because with him in 2023, I mean, he's a 97th percentile fielding center fielder.
Yes.
Like, great stuff. And then you have the expected slugging percentage at 91%, and a guy hits 38 home runs and 20 stolen bases, 857 OPS, and you're thinking, okay. But that on-base percentage has always been around the 310s, which I'd like it more in the 330s, 340s if you're going to hit like that. He strikes out a lot. He's 14th percentile in K rate, 10th percentile in whiff percentage.
Did you see
3
his
percentile in chase rate, 7 percentile in walk rate.
Can you read, by the way? Because if you Google this player, and this is a good player, I'm sure at some point it's going to turn on for him. Can you tell the chat how many times he struck out in 2024 and how many times he walked? Because I really think, for those of you who don't have your phone out right now, it will blow you away.
He struck out 141 times. Well, I mean, even in 2023. But he struck out last year 141 times.
It's worse in 2023.
When you see it, you'll ship bricks. Remember that?
Yeah. He struck out. He struck out 172 times in 2023 and walked, wait for it, 30 times. He had 30 walks. 30. It's not easy to hit in Major League Baseball. I'll tell you that right now. There's a reason we pay so much money to these guys to do a job. It's not easy to just stand there. Very difficult. 30 walks is insane.
No, this is the old Yankees. If you're trying to write, you can't go from Juan Soto to this. This is the polar opposite of a Juan Soto. Why didn't we jump on Snell for 5? Well, I'll tell you right now. I don't think anybody thought he was going to sign that early on in free agency. That was a surprise for me. And I just don't think they were going to sign anybody during that Soto, negotiation. So I would rather, thinking about this, because I have thought about this, I would rather have Fried. He's exactly what they wanted. They wanted a guy, because here's the thing. When you're talking about relievers versus starter, I want you to pitch to contact, soft contact as a starter. Because what was the deal with last year? They started off, they had this huge streak of, pitchers going 6 innings or whatever it was, right? And when you give length, it basically gives the bullpen a rest. It gives your team a chance to actually win the game. You have more of a chance, right? Well, that's the thing. You're not going length if you have a bunch of Carlos Rodons that are just going to strike guys out. It's nice and all, but taking up a lot of the pitch count, this day and age, 105 pitches to get through 5 innings. Well, now I have a guy in Max Fried who's going to be a ground ball pitcher, right? That was the rationale. And it's funny because Devin Williams he pitches to contact. Like when he gets contacted, it's soft contact, but he strikes out a ton of guys. They call him the airbender, which is
that's fine. If you're going to be a
amazing.
Closer, you can go ahead and do that.
Exactly. But I think that was the thing, though, Gary, is what I'm saying is that I love Snell, but I understand why they went with Fried, and I actually agree with it.
Okay. So you feel like they made a definitive choice. So for me personally, to sort of answer this question directly, I don't think the Yankees made a choice between Blake Snell and Max Fried. Here's what I think happened. I think the Yankees said, our number one target is Juan Soto. If we resign Juan Soto, We're going to try to make via trade all of the moves that we find necessary to fill the holes that we talked about heading into 2025 with Juan Soto. But remember, guys, Blake Snell, he's like, let me go get this done. Gets the deal done with the Dodgers first, right? Now, once that happens, the Yankees are saying, well, I guess he's off the table because we're waiting on this guy. Now Juan Soto makes the decision, I'm going to the New York Mets. The Yankees say, well, here's going to be our strategy for this team. Brian Cashman said, we're going to go sign Max Fried, who's a ground ball guy. He's going to give us length, but we're going to create a surplus. Why? Because we want to trade Nestor Cortez. We want to potentially dangle a Luis Heel and say, what can we get at the top of the market for this player? And we've looked. And at this point, Max Fried was our best option at the time that wasn't going to cost us $350 million. And now that you look in hindsight, if we spent on a Corbin Burnes, you're likely out of the market for Kyle Tucker next year. You're likely out of the market for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next year if you ever wanted to look that direction. So in general, I think Snell was just poor timing. He wanted to go to the Dodgers, and it seems like based on how early he got that deal done, it made so much sense, Jake.
Oh, yeah.
Given what happened last year, he obviously, I'm pretty sure he fired Scott Boras for that wait that he went through. I'm not exactly sure on this, but I just feel like I remember that happening.
No, I think you're thinking of, what's his name? Monty.
Yes, Monty did fire him. So anyways, Blake Snell waited around with Scott Boras. Scott Boras was promising him top dollar. He was asking for rumors where Yankees are offering $180 million. He didn't get that deal, right? Blake Snell eventually came out and said, yeah, that offer was never on the table. He just got the shaft. Pitched incredibly well in 2024 to a lot of people's surprise. He did it again and then signed immediately. So yeah, zip code 0. I don't think it had anything to do with that they didn't like Blake Snell at that 5-year mark. I just think you weren't going to sign a player to that type of deal before Juan Soto. I think it's the bad message to send. Obviously, it didn't work out anyway. But anyways, we have another super chat here. First time chatter, welcome in. We really appreciate that.
Appreciate you.
Miss Kate Fabe says, thoughts on Alonso. Now, Alonso, I think, before I pitch it over to you, Jake, I'm going to be short and sweet with this and give you the runway.
Mm-hmm.
I told you before, I think it's a terrible, awful, dismal look to lose your second best player in your franchise to the crosstown rival New York Mets and then take their player who's a free agent, who's obviously the lesser of the two players and still expensive. So I completely understand some of his strengths. He's going to hit homers. He can be clutch, especially in a New York market. Those are good things. But what he's bad at, defensively, he's about as middle of the road as they come. He's not athletic. And a lot of people told me they want to get more athletic and more versatile. That's not a direction to go. So I think he can be impactful, but I think I'm out on Alonso.
No, I'm definitely out on Alonso. Like I said, kind of earlier when I was talking about Robert, I mean, he kind of represents what the Yankees used to be. And I think the whole point is that Juan Soto can actually be a blessing in disguise. Him showing up to the Bronx for 1 year could actually change everything for this team if they really learn from what they had with him. And, they always like the thing is always like, you don't know what you have until it's gone. But I think the Yankees do. I think the Yankees are aware that Juan Soto would work counts. I think the Yankees are aware that Juan Soto got on base and opened up the door for Aaron Judge, and Aaron Judge got on base. And then you started to see as the season went on, Glaber got on base and Oswaldo Cabrera and so forth. So I don't think bringing in the home run or strikeout guys that, New York City Manhattaners or, people living in Soho or whatever are absolutely going to call in on the Michael K show or whatever and complain home run or strikeout. I don't think bringing in Pete Alonso is the right move. I think the problem is you're going away from what you said you were going to do. What our assumption is of the New York Yankees in 2025 is that they're going to take the constructive criticism and they're actually going to do something with it. I don't know what I'm choking on. There's like air. I don't know. But
The man's got allergies.
They're gonna take that constructive criticism head on, and they're going to do something with it. And going out and getting a ground ball pitcher, and then getting a guy who is he's got no range whatsoever at first base. He's a horrible fielder, but he hits a lot of home runs. Well, it sounds like you just got, Adam Dunn, or you got, Edwin Encarnacion. And I just don't think that level of player makes any sense for what they're trying to do. And you look at Cody Bellinger, I'm like, I'll sacrifice 10, 20 home runs if I get better defense, a guy that has versatility, can play all over the field. Because I'm telling you right now, what's going to happen if they get Pete Alonso is it's going to get so bad that Ben Rice will eventually start playing first, and they're going to rotate Stanton and Alonso at DH. That's what's going to happen. Or they're just not going to make any sort of change, and Alonso is going to be worse than Rizzo was at the end of last year, than LeMahieu was, than anybody. And that is really the thing, is that if Alonso is such a net negative because of his defense, and then you're paying him, like, this isn't a guy that you were given, but you're actually paying him top dollar, that's the concern. And so I like the guy. I do. I think he's a fun player to watch, and he's a great hitter, or, he's an exciting hitter. I won't call him a great hitter. He was fun to watch in the postseason. Came up clutch. But it just doesn't make any sense, Gary, to bring in Pete Alonso if what you are trying to do is get better on the defensive side, focus more on solid contact, and focus on getting athletic, because Pete Alonso is neither of those things.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I want to get to the super chat from Dimension Yami. He says, first of all, we appreciate the 10th. Thank you for supporting this channel. Said, I love the move so far. I think, Jake, we both agree that these moves have been pretty solid, but the Yankees didn't lose the World Series because of pitching. I think that's true. Can't wait to see what Cashman's plans are. I don't necessarily know if I can't wait for the plans, because obviously now as they're starting to materialize, we've talked through some of the options, right? Like maybe a Katel Marte might be an option. Obviously Cody Bellinger, it goes without saying how good of a fit defensively, especially he is, his contact left-handed bat. So that type of stuff's exciting, which I'm sure is what you're alluding to. But he's absolutely right. Pitching really wasn't our Achilles heel. But let me say something about the pitching. I think in general, we got somewhat of the result we were looking for on the mound. But you guys also have to remember the type of run we had to go on. We were playing Kansas City, Cleveland. You end up going to the World Series. And frankly, if you look across the aisle at the Los Angeles Dodgers, you have to remember how they got to where they got to. They ran into a San Diego Padres team and shut them down for 30 innings in a row. They didn't give up a run. Okay. Essentially what happened is they ran into lights out pitching in Los Angeles, something people did not see. Obviously you were seeing Walker Buehler, lights out. He was coming out the bullpen. It was ridiculous, right? So when you get into postseason settings, those series start to shrink, and it puts more pressure on really good ball clubs. So when you come into a series and you think, I think this team's got more offensive firepower than we've got, but then you go into the 7th or 8th or 9th inning, or hell, even into extra innings, and they're throwing a guy that frankly a lot of people recognize, and then you look across the aisle and say, well, who's going to throw the 11th inning for the Yankees? And you look across and you say, oh, here comes Jake Cousins, right? Here comes a Tim Hill. Luke Weaver, if he didn't come onto the scene at the last second, we didn't have a closer. We had no closer for the majority of last year. If we had left our closer in the role he was in all year, he would have broken the Yankees all-time record for blown saves. That's how bad it was out in the bullpen. So I know people have forgotten that, because obviously we kind of got up on our feet, made it to a World Series, and I was proud of that moment. But we cannot forget what happened for 6 months. This Yankees bullpen is going to make life a lot easier for this Yankees team, but we can also not forget we just lost Juan Soto. They're going to have to replenish those bats 3, 4, 5 at bats a time. They're going to have to get a Bellinger and then some. What are you doing after that? Jason Dominguez, when you're called up and you make the big league team out of spring training, we expect that to happen this year. He's got to hit. It can't be an Anthony Volpe rookie season that we saw hitting 205. He has to be a producer. So yeah, dimension. Thank you again for the super chat. I think in general, we're excited for what could potentially happen, but we also still got punched in the jaw from Soto. Feels like we got kicked in the nuts, right, with this Tucker trade to Chicago, but is what it is. You have to take your lumps and make quality decisions. And when we look at this team at spring training, Jake, I know we're going to try to go to those games. I need to look at a team and be proud of who's in left field. And you don't feel like, well, we're just going to wait on Tucker out there, right? Because that is not a win now product. So I'm excited, but it's a little bit of a nervous energy.
So I think when it comes to the pitchers, because I understand, I mean, this is the optics, and they had to know that this was coming. You lose Juan Soto, and you're like, you know, what is it? The the meme where like slap some tape on it. It's like,
you're talking about the thing where you put the tape on the boat and the water is like coming out. Yeah. I don't remember what what do they call that again? That's going to drive me insane.
It's so spot on. It's, oh, you lost Juan Soto, who's a potential MVP level hitter, pitching. You know, it's like, that's exactly.
Flex tape. Yes.
Flex tape. Thank you, guys.
Oh my God. We are in flex tape mode right now.
Yeah. So that is flex tape. And I knew Alex would know it. He did it all uppercase. Yeah, it's the flex tape meme. That's what it is. And so, you know, I mean, that's how the optics are. I agree with it because I think they're going to do more moves. But I also think this helps because Boone, the way he uses the bullpen, I think it also helps. Johnny Lowe will be back. When he's healthy, you have a 1, 2, 3 punch, regardless of how you want to use them. Johnny Lowe in the 7th. This is how I would do it. Johnny Lowe in the 7th. You got in the 8th would be, I don't know. What are you doing? Are you throwing? Because, like, to me, I might go with Devin Williams in the 9th.
Yeah, you don't try to reinvent the wheel. Let's not pretend. Luke Weaver essentially crashed into the scene at the last possible second. He's not this guy has 6-7 years under his belt, who's just been there, done that. He was spectacular in 2024, but you also have to remember he's done it for a quarter of a season. You can't have a quarter of any type of season and then turn around and be like, yeah, Devin Williams, nice career. He's been throwing together 5-6 straight seasons in a row where he's just sensational. So when a guy shows you repeatedly who he is, I think, Jake, I agree with you. We should believe him. Throw him in the closer's role. Having Luke Weaver in that hybrid Michael King role that we saw multiple innings, I think that would be the best possible situation for him, and it makes our bullpen better.
I agree. Oh, by the way, did you see Devin Williams' Ks per inning stat?
I did not.
It's insanity. He has 375 strikeouts in 235 2/3 innings.
Well, I'll tell you this. Striking guys out in the 9th inning, I think will be a sight to behold. Because having watched the 9th inning, for those of you who've got Yes Network or you go on Stream East, wherever you get your games, if you watch a lot of Yankees baseball, you just dread seeing the ball put in play. Now, obviously, it's going to improve this year defensively because Gleyber Torres is gone, right? We've got a couple guys defensively that we don't necessarily trust who will be on their way out the door. But seeing a guy strike out in the 9th inning, there's a reason Mason Miller is going to make a lot of money in his career, is that you miss the bat in the 9th inning. That is supremely valuable. And he does it by not even throwing 100 miles an hour. This guy has got what'd you call it? An airbender changeup. It's disgusting. I watch it all the time on Pitching Ninja. It is a lot of fun.
He's a frequent flyer on that one for sure.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And this is a guy that they could honestly not name a closer. I think it would honestly be a benefit to them if they don't name a closer and you have one or the other going. And that's the thing. When you create a bullpen like this, Johnny Lowe, potentially bringing back Tommy Kahnle, potentially bringing back Tim Hill, having, you know, the guys that you found last year, you know, and Cousins and, you know, Beater, right? And they talk about Brubaker. And this is the thing, is that if you build a good enough bullpen, you could have shifts. Like, it's like basketball. Like, you have your You know, when Kentucky, that one year where they had a starting five and a second starting five, and they would just all shift in and shift out and shift in. It would be like that. And what I mean is, you know, you have a 3-game set. It's back to back to back, right? In the first game, you know, that's the game where Devin Williams is going to, you know, be the closer. And the setup man might be Jake Cousins. But then the next game, you might decide, like, look, they're expecting Devin Williams. They're reading the scouting report and all that. They're watching the film. And then the next day, nope, Luke Weaver, enjoy. And the 8th inning, you know, it's going to be Johnny Lowe. And then
Chat, how do you feel about that? Because I'm actually interested to see what the room feels about it. Because for me personally, I think I love the idea of just having a guy that understands this is your time. I remember Alex Rodriguez came out and he was talking about what was the difference between that 09 team and a lot of the teams you've seen since. And he actually mentioned knowing what my role was coming to the ballpark had a huge effect positively. So I'm interested to see what our chat thinks about having mix and match closers. I think when you're talking about guys whose talent is here, then maybe that's a little bit more compelling. You're talking about matchups, and that makes sense. We saw that this year. But when you're talking about a Devin Williams, I don't know, even if I see a Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, like lefty, righty, I don't even know if I'm trying to go matchups. I think in general, I'm just like, hey, throw Devin Williams out there. I don't care who's hitting.
No, I think that's definitely fair. We're going to see. I think somebody's going to emerge, whether that's a beater or that's Brew Baker or that's Mark Leiter Jr., because I know a lot of people think he's going to get traded. I don't think he's going to get traded. I think he's going to build off that World Series performance he had, and I think he'll end up being a contributor next year. Who I don't think is going to be a contributor, and I'm sorry, I just don't buy it, Scott Effross. I'm out on Effross. It's been too long. I just don't see it, man. He couldn't even make the postseason roster. I don't think he's going to make the roster. I don't. I think he's going to get cut after spring training. So that's kind of how I see that. I think Tim Hill will come back and Canely, and they're going to have a lot of different looks. We're still waiting on the Stroman trade. Are they going to keep him around for the bullpen? Probably not. That would have been a lot of money, man.
$18 million. That's a lot of dough. So I'm assuming the Yankees would have to eat some of that, right? Like, there's not going to be a team in baseball who's like, yeah, Stroman, $18 million. It's crazy that obviously we agreed to it.
They'll attach a prospect.
You would imagine so.
It'll be. So, I think it's Pereira. It'll be Everson Pereira, who unfortunately I like, but I think they'll trade him. Okay. They'll get cash and probably like a high A ball guy, and also send Stroman, and that's what I think it'll be.
Okay. Yeah. So let's get to this super chat. Luis, we really appreciate the 5. Thank you for supporting this show.
Yes, thank you.
Well, the Padres are talking about trading Luis Arraez. I know we talked about this.
He loves Luis players.
Loves Luis Arraez. Would be a perfect leadoff hitter, but is he good defensively? Defensively, atrocious. Not a good defensive player at all. I think in general, it's a little redundant to get players who kind of rake and then are just going to be awful defensively. And I think somebody said it in the chat, you'd probably end up seeing Arraez at first base. Like, there's a reason he's been over there before. He's not good. Okay. And very good hitter, surely would help us offensively. I don't think there's any question about that. But Luis, to directly answer this again, if you're after Luis Arraez and you're going to go after, oh, here's what he can do for us offensively, but we don't really care about the defense, we'll get over it. Well, then just bring back Gleyber Torres, you know? So
I agree.
I wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't bring him back. And I actually brought that up. Well, I think you saw the video, but anyway, I brought it up in the video I did for Devin Williams earlier today. And I said, you know, I think at this point in time, when you've gone out of your way to make a defensive impact and you went out and got a starting pitcher, who, you know, is going to create more ground ball opportunities, I don't think you, and here's the thing, Gleyber is a good fielder, but he lacks consistency, and that's what makes him an ultimately consistent bad fielder, right? Because people will say he's bad, but he can make a crazy play here and there that's like saves 2 runs, and you're like, how the hell did he make that? But then he's going to miss the easy stuff. And unfortunately, that consistency factor, a lot of the Gold Glove guys, like, yeah, they're flashing, you know, the web gems and stuff like that, but a lot of them aren't, Gary. A lot of them are just so consistent that they're fine hey, I don't have that crazy range where I'm going to make that Derek Jeter jump throw, but I'm not going to give up the easy ones.
Yeah,
And
I think Brandon Crawford. Like, I just think ground ball straight to your chest, field the ball, throw a strike over to first base, and we move on. And then when there's a diving play, you can live with a play not being made because you don't expect that play to be made. But the routine ground balls that you just say, hey, 99 out of 100 times that ball's hit to you, can I trust you to make this play? What if it's a World Series game, there's a routine ground ball hit to you? Can I trust that you're going to do what you did all year and just make the same pitch and catch? Some players are just less flashy than others. I think this is also why, Jake, your guy, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, wasn't necessarily liked. He made a lot of the routine plays, but the flash plays he really couldn't. So that's why a lot of people,
range,
you get left with the taste that someone's not a good fielder because they can't make those spectacular plays. But when you look up at his numbers, you say, oh, well, okay, well, people are giving him money for a reason. Maybe it's because of those routine plays. So yeah, I think you're right. Gleyber Torres was a bit underrated defensively because of the spectacular plays he could make, but the routine plays, he was downright putrid. And also for this super chat, Armando Gomez, again, appreciate it. Been a supporter of our show for a while now, so thank you very much. Says, how is DJ still on this roster? I'm going to answer this question with a little quote from, who's it? Stanley from The Office. Money.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the only reason he's still on this roster. He knows it. I know it. Jake knows it. It is what it is. It's the situation at hand. We wanted to make sure we retained a player in DJ LeMahieu. I think Ariel Epstein actually brought up a great point that when he was at his best, it was some of the most fun Yankees baseball I've seen. I absolutely loved watching DJ LeMahieu play baseball. And unfortunately, you get a heel injury, shin, ankle, fell off a cliff.
You know what's funny about that? And I was thinking about that since we spoke with her, whatever it's supposed to be in English. I was thinking about this. I think we got so caught up in the slugging of Juan Soto that we forgot the Yankees can absolutely do this thing with contact hitting, but it has to, I think really the focus on this team, if you go the Bellinger route and the Nico Horner route and you get guys like that, you have to understand these guys have to play as a collective unit. There has to be timely hitting. There has to be fundamentals. And there has to be, even if it's a single, it's got to be something in play here. Like, you can't be striking out. In addition to that, I do think when I look at Cody Bellinger, I think he's going to have a 30 home run, type of year in the Bronx. I think if he is traded to the Yankees, I think he'll actually feel like a star again. I do.
Really?
And I think, yes.
Okay.
And I think the question won't be, why did they trade him? It'll be like, why didn't they sign him when he was a free agent? What could have been? And, I just think that versatility is great and all. But I feel like they're not going to get, and this is how I feel, they're not going to get that big slugger. I saw people mention Brent Rooker. And Gary, I think we've evolved in our roles, as like analysts here. Because you and I were like Brent Rooker all day at the deadline. I would not take Brent Rooker at all right now. And I think it's just a reminder that the Yankees, and I caught myself saying it going back and looking at some of our old videos, and we believed it. At one point or another, we were saying, I don't care about defense. And now here we are kind of like, defense literally wins championships. And so I think that's just the thing is we've learned from watching this team that, bats are nice, but you got to have both. I think at this point in the game, there are teams that pay players because they're such great hitters. And it's like, if you don't have any semblance of defense, that's a net negative. Defense is going to come back to hurt you. And so I look at potentially a guy that no one brought up in the comment section that has actually been rumored to be available in Washington. It's Luis Garcia Jr. I am very curious about him at second. He might cost quite a bit. 25 years old. He'll be 25 actually in May. And the Nationals currently he's on his second year of arbitration, has a third and fourth. He wouldn't be a free agent until 2028. So you have 4 years of control with him. He is a guy that is going to hit for average, around average, right? 282. He is going to, field. He's got great range. He plays second base. Like, I think he'd be an interesting piece. I don't know what it would cost, but these are the type of outside the box guys that I think we have to look at, because something tells me the Yankees aren't going to get Nico Horner and they're not going to get Bregman. They're going to do one of those Didi Gregorius moves that's like nobody had on their radar. And then they just show up and they're like, yeah, we got this guy. And the people that know him are going to be like, hell yeah. And the people that don't are going to be like, he sucks. And I feel like that's incoming. And I'm not saying it's Luis Garcia Jr., but I'm literally trying to, and I feel like you are as well, trying to get everybody ready for anything. And I feel like going through and breaking down these players is the smart approach.
Yeah, I feel like it feels like I'm trying to fool people. Mm-hmm. That's the way it feels, because in general, I told you guys before, Kyle Tucker was it. That was the move that needed to be made. And I just don't know of the concept. I agree that you can win a championship, that you can win a championship hitting for contact, timely hitting, fielding the ball. You get a Max Fried, clearly a ground ball pitcher. You need to have a solid defensive infield. I think everybody can agree on that. But it also cannot be overstated how much upgrade this team needs offensively while maintaining some type of baseline defensively. We have to remember what happened in left field in October. Jason Dominguez was called up to our postseason roster, and everybody expected him to make a massive impact because of that bat. They assumed while he doesn't hit lefties worth a lick, because he's really not a switch hitter, he's going to hit left-handed against righties. He's going to do his damage, and we were trying to figure out when he was going to make that impact. Well, Jake, we never got that. That day never came, and that was because of what he was doing defensively. So when you bring up players in Washington who a lot of people haven't heard of, and rightfully so, I mean, these are not household names, it's difficult to hear that. But at the same time, you have to remember, based on the way we lost in the World Series, isn't this how we should be building a team where you say, can this guy fill this position? Right? Because if you look around the league, how many players are sensational enough offensively where they can just be a total dud defensively? The list is pretty short. It's not long. And as good as Jason Dominguez was and as high as his ceiling potentially could have been, the Yankees didn't even try to see that ceiling. That's how compelling defense is, especially in October. So, yeah, I don't know if it's going to be the kid from Washington. Is it going to be Horner attached to that Bellinger deal? But whoever it is, I've made the claim they cannot be out of position. We need to trust people who play the position they grew up playing, that they developed in. We should not be, if you get Cody Bellinger, don't throw him over at a different position he never plays. Put him in the position that he's played his whole life. That would be best. And also get guys who are naturally good at the position, and then tell me that you like their bat. Don't tell me you like their bat like a Pete Alonso, and then just say, well, where are they going to play? We'll DH him. We'll DH him today. We'll DH him today, and then give Stanton a day off. We're going to give him a day.
Oh, God. I don't Your think favorite. Give him a day.
I don't think the Yankees need more players where we need to figure out what the hell are we going to do with him. We need to say he's a solution over here. Now, can he hit? And if the answer is yes, then that's a player we should be going after. So I want to get to the super chat from John Kirk. Thank you with the 5. It says, Gary, your father was so hitterish. First, I've heard that. We need another bat like that. Not available. And who could hit leadoff this year? Are they on the team yet? So we actually gave the answer that we thought Caleb Durbin at some point or another in the season, not that we thought he's the next Derek Jeter, but stylistically, we thought, okay, this guy, he has the potential to be able to take at bats at the top of the lineup. He's not going to hit 330, but he's the type of guy who might be able to hit 280, 285, steal some bags, right? Score some runs. We've got great hitters in the 3 and 4 spots. So I thought there was a fit there, but now there's a real question mark of who's hitting leadoff for this team, Jake. I think it's Anthony Volpe right now. As it currently constructed, Anthony Volpe's our only option who can run a damn base. Otherwise, you're leaving yourself in a situation where you're going to have a Kyle Schwarber type leadoff hitter, which obviously has worked in years past. Kyle Schwarber's taken leadoff at bats for World Series teams, but do the Yankees want to build that way? Is that the style that the Yankees want to play into 2025? I would reckon they don't. So, John, I'm going to say the leadoff hitter right now is currently not on the team.
I'm going to say it's Anthony Volpe. I think there's a chance it could be Bellinger. I think there's a chance it could be Horner. And I think there's a chance that, they could do something different. I don't think Judge is ever going to lead off. But, they could go with Jason Dominguez. They could try something.
Jason Dominguez wouldn't be bad.
No. What I'll say is this, though, with this Yankees team, they actually don't need to replace Juan Soto. They don't need that bat, because if they are able to get a bunch of guys that can get on base and get that contact and find ways to, get on base with like just walking and what have you, and they limit their strikeouts, they have enough pop in this lineup with Judge and Stanton and potentially Jason Dominguez. And we saw Wells potentially could have, that, and then Jazz. And then obviously Bellinger, if he hits, say, 30 bombs. Gary, I honestly think they can go to the World Series. And then at that point, it's not a crapshoot. That's not what I'm saying. But at that point, it's just you play, if it's 7 games, 6 games, 5 games, or 4 games, you just play those 4, 5, 6, 7 games better than the other team. And you can win. And if they get enough of a lead or just a little bit of a lead, if this pitching is as dominant as maybe it looks on paper, you might be able to steal one. So I understand that might not be the answer people want to hear right now, because it's like, yeah, I agree, replacing Soto would help. But I do actually see a pathway here, Gary, where if they are able to get Bellinger in here and get Nico Horner or whoever, now you're looking at guys that get on base, that can steal bases, that are athletic in the field, so they're not costing you runs that you have to go and make up for at the plate, right? So when you get rid of those guys, you get rid of the guys that are essentially the net negatives, and now you just have a lineup of guys that can hit, guys that can get on base, and guys that are creating more RBI opportunities for an Aaron Judge, a Giancarlo Stanton, a Jason Dominguez, and so forth. Then I feel like, to me, that's how you can win. And it's evidenced. Some of the Yankee teams in history that have won World Series, they've done it the old-fashioned way. They've had, big moments where they've had a Derek Jeter home run here and there. But for the most part, it's about getting on base, having timely hitting, and having good pitching. And if the Yankees created a roster like that to go into 2025, I have no doubt they'll be back in the World Series. The question is, when it matters the most, are you going to be able to translate that and go toe-to-toe with the Dodgers or the Mets? And I think it'll be the Dodgers. And that's really the question.
Yeah, we've got to get better, because I think it would be malpractice. It would be criminal. Okay?
They do.
I would expect the FBI to show up to my door if I told people, yeah, we can just get Nico Horner, Bellinger, and then probably throw another dude in the pen, and we've got a shot. Sure, but everyone's got a shot against everybody. To come into 2025 having lost Soto and those being your pickups, you get Fried, to say, oh yeah, I like our chances. The Dodgers on paper, if Teoscar Hernandez returns, and that's a big if, and I think expectation, Ken Rosenthal was reporting his expectation was for that to happen, it would be malpractice for us to say that we think we are just going to go toe-to-toe with those teams. It's going to be a long shot. And we're going to have to play our asses off. It's possible. This is baseball. So I'm going to say this. I want to jump to our super chats, get to these last two, and then we'll probably wrap here pretty soon. LB with the super says, we appreciate the 2. Didn't say anything, actually. But we appreciate you supporting the show. Kid Reyes says, this is actually pretty funny, says, have your dad apply for hitting coach and train Volpe and Wells. I feel like it's the key to unlocking the offense. Yeah, I mean, I think in general, Anthony Volpe doesn't have to reinvent the wheel, Jake. I think in what we saw was that if he was what we were witnessing in the postseason, that's plenty. He doesn't have to slug. If he's putting the ball in play and he's at first base early and often, he can do a lot of damage to a baseball game with his legs. And that is more than a lot of players on our team in 2024 could say. You get Austin Wells over at first base. Where's he going? Nowhere, right? You get Giancarlo Stanton at first base. Where are they going? Juan Soto, Aaron Judge. Where are they going? Nowhere. Ball in the gap. They're not scoring. Anthony Volpe can change a game in many ways. And Kid Reyes, while I appreciate the compliment, obviously, to my dad and what he could potentially do for these players, I think the way that they need to change the game, what you saw in 2024 when they were at their best, is hitting the ball hard consistently and staying within the strike zone and not getting too big. Once you saw Anthony Volpe trying to play like a power hitter, baby version of Gleyber Torres, I did not like the player we were seeing.
I agree, and I think the problem is he's no different than a young quarterback going through 4 different offensive coordinators. What I mean by this is Volpe has been told he's had 3 different hitting coaches this early on in his career. He's been told how to hit this way, hit this way, hit this way. He's been told to make adjustments. I think Sean Casey was better than the guy before him, personally. I just do.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's remotely close. And honestly, Sean Casey could have had an argument to be the hitting coach this year too. But you have him and you have Rousen. They're different philosophies. Coaches have different ideas. So I think there's a chance that they tried messing around with Volpe's swing. I'm talking to Lawson, not Rousen, but Lawson before Sean Casey.
There's been a lot.
I think he messed around with Volpe's swing. I think Sean Casey tried to go back to the basics. I think you started to see that at the beginning of the season. And then I think Rousen got involved and maybe changed some things. And then you started to see when you're constantly telling a hitter that how to hit. I mean, this is the thing that a lot of people don't know that have never played baseball is how mental this game is, how mental hitting is. So not only do I have to guess the pitch, and I have to, sometimes guys just set their strike zone. I'm not swinging at anything here. I'm swinging at everything here. If it's not there, I'm just going to take everything, right? You go up there with a game plan, but now you're also in the back of your head thinking, well, James Rousen wants me to do this or wants me to do this. And, but Sean Casey wanted me to do this. And, Dylan Lawson wanted me to, it's like, so I honestly thought about this and I'm like, I wonder if it's honestly just that. Too many cooks in the kitchen. And for, the children over on X who are like, ooh, rent free. They're living rent free in Volpe's head, man. I'm telling you right now, when you get that many guys that are telling you to do all these different things, I think you've seen it. How
much credit do people give these hitting coaches? Do you know how much my dad didn't listen to hardly a damn thing anyone said? My dad came to the
today's
field,
game, though.
And mind you, it's obviously different levels of player. We get that.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between people who are great and people who are really bad for 3 or 4 months. And then you see in October, oh, this is the player he can be. Is all of a sudden the hitting coach to credit in October? No, it's Anthony Volpe just finding something and he needs to stay within himself. When people say, I need to see 260, 270 from Anthony Volpe, it's not the hitting coach's problem. It's his problem.
Yeah, I'm not trying to give him an excuse at all.
It is insane. So in general, people can give you tips and tricks and show you some video work of what you were doing 2 weeks ago as opposed to today. But how many all-time great players talk to 4 or 5 different hitting coaches and then are like, oh, there it is. And then went to a new team and they're like, oh, I don't know how to hit anymore. My hitting coach is back in Cincinnati. No, you at some point or another, you need to take ownership of what you're doing. And you agree with that. It's obviously the point you're making, but it is so absurd that people think that a hitting coach is going to be responsible for the reason Anthony Volpe can step in the bucket for 2 weeks or 2 months and then suddenly stop doing it. And then you have Jack Curry talking about it, Michael Kay talking about it. His head is more still. He hit 290 for a couple weeks and then it goes away. That is his fault, which, we're all in agreement with. So Anthony Volpe, I think this is the year where we're going to say offensively, this has got to be the version that we were all waiting for, where he puts it together, where he's more consistent. We don't have to talk about mechanics all the time and what went wrong. He's going to have to watch himself, figure it out himself.
So the last thing I'll talk about here as we wrap this thing up, I wanted to bring up the biggest concern I have with Alex Bregman. Okay.
Okay.
Because I feel like we didn't really get to that. We talked a lot about some other things. There's just so much to juggle, things get lost, but I want to make sure people who are in here, and we have over 600 people on YouTube, and we have close to 2,500 people in general across YouTube and Twitter. I will say, those of you on Twitter, before we end this show, definitely come on over to YouTube. Give us a sub. It really, we'd really appreciate it. Really help us out. We passed 5,000, by the way, so thank you guys.
That's pretty cool.
That's a cool little thing there. But yeah, with Alex Bregman, Gary, since 2020, you have the hamstring twice. You have the leg issue. You have health and safety protocols I don't really care with, but hamstring, hand, wrist, elbow. He's had a lot of issues injury-wise. Now, he doesn't miss a ton of games, but I just worry that this could eventually, and I know people have mentioned on socials that this could end up being a Jacoby Ellsbury all over again. Another thing I want to point out is I saw this analytical data that I thought was really fascinating. According to this analytical data, the Yankees, if he was hitting at Yankee Stadium, 50 of his hits that were expected hits at the Astros ballpark, Minute Maid, they would not have been hits at Yankee Stadium. So there is a question as if he makes any sense based on the venue. He doesn't really hit particularly well at Yankee Stadium. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because that is a concern of mine. And then, of course, the injuries that have lingered over his career. Hasn't missed a ton of games, but 2021 and 2020, he missed some games, and then, of course, last year, having that first half. We talk about Verdugo and how, remember, we're like, I was saying, I want him back. Like, he could be the long-term left fielder. And it's like, then that second half killed him. And that was a big thing that the Red Sox were talking about. So I am concerned about some of those things, but what are your thoughts on Bregman in that regard?
Availability should bother everybody.
Yeah.
Nothing should bother you more than paying a person, any human being, to play a sport and they don't show up to work. Look at the Philadelphia 76ers. They have one of the best players in the NBA. I'm not going to go too far down this rabbit hole. He's paid almost $50 million in Joel Embiid to play basketball for 82 regular season games. It's not much to ask. Do you know this guy doesn't play more than 40 a year? Okay? And that bothers them to their core. The last thing the Yankees need to be doing is losing Juan Soto because of a choice, right? He's an adult. He can make a choice for himself. And you turn around and pay a player who's a career 238 postseason hitter, not great, and doesn't hit at Yankee Stadium. I think those numbers are a little overstated because he has to face our pitching, and usually our pitching is quite good. So I've always tried to give people the benefit of the doubt when it comes to hitting at Yankee Stadium. But I'll tell you right now, if there's a player I'm going to be paying north of $20 million a year, and everyone talked about, they can't wait to get Gleyber Torres out the door. Well, one thing about Gleyber Torres is he was available. He was there every day.
Yeah.
And hitting, especially in the second half of the season. And Gleyber Torres is not a 238 postseason hitter. Am I making the claim that Gleyber Torres should return? I am not, because I think he's highly flawed at what the Yankees are atrocious at, which is defense, right? And being fundamental. Alex Bregman is going to be a much better defensive player, much better fundamentals, right? And that is a good thing. The problem is when you're talking about offense, when people say, that's a bad contract, what are they usually talking about, Jake? They're talking about the bat. Can you hit long-term? And if you're going to tell me 50 of those hits in Houston wouldn't be hits at Yankee Stadium, it's not exactly a black and white thing, because those hits count. It's where he was hitting. Just the same as if Aaron Judge hit a fly ball out to right and went to the first row in right field, we would still count it as a home run because that's baseball. But the point here in the takeaway is that if you're giving Alex Bregman 6 or 7 years, you can essentially conclude 2 or 3 of those seasons are going to be washed away due to injury, unfortunately. That's very unfortunate. And then on the off chance you get the healthy Alex Bregman, you can expect a below 250 hitter in postseason baseball. And we have quite a few players on our team.
What is happening?
I'm making music in my ear. Chat, are you hearing this?
No, but like you just popped out. It was very weird.
Are you joking me right now?
Yeah, it was weird.
Dude, banging music in my ear. I literally can't hear anything. Bruh.
Oh,
what
man.
was that?
I have no idea.
People said it was
your voice just disappeared. It was just like they rug pulled you.
That I can't wait to watch that over again.
That was funny.
So Alex says I just went underwater.
Yeah, we were like underwater. Yeah, aliens. There's like alien stuff. Probably a drone takeover.
Oh my
Your
God.
mom.
The hour and 40-minute mark. I cannot wait to watch that.
Oh my God. We got drones. We got frogs in the comments section. Thanos snapped his fingers.
Dude.
Man.
Do you ever give like a PowerPoint presentation and right when you're starting the presentation, something gets screwed up? And then all of a sudden you're like, and then you look at the class and they're just like, that was what that was. I literally was just like totally thrown for. I don't even remember what we were talking about. Oh, Alex Bregman.
Yeah, Alex Bregman.
It's not a good move based on career trajectory. And
have you seen his Yankee Stadium numbers, by the way?
No, can you go ahead and read those off before I
got
go
them right
underwater
here
again?
So understand this. He's not going to play over 20 games again, in a stadium for every stadium in the league. He hasn't been around that long. So I decided in games that he started, at least 7 games at every stadium. If you take all the games in which he's played at least 7 games at every stadium, the Yankees are the worst stadium average wise. He hits 207 at Yankee Stadium. He is the worst OPS, 664. Like, this is horrible. And this matters because I understand he's going up against Yankee pitching. What about batting average with balls in play? It's 231. And guess what? What if I told you that he's just a bigger name version of Alex Verdugo?
I think this would just be a poor signing. Alex Verdugo would be I think bringing back Alex Verdugo right now would be a much better signing than bringing Bregman on the team. And I'm being serious because you're talking about a player who's not going to be getting $200 million. He's not going to be getting $140 million.
He's the opposite of Verdugo, dude. Like, so Verdugo, you know how he struggles in the second half?
Yes.
But he's good in the first half? Bregman struggles in the first half for his career, always has. 260, 805 OPS for his career, which, like, again, those are good numbers, but 356 on-base percentage. Then in the second half, he hits 291, 379 on-base percentage. We're talking a 906 OPS. His OPS goes up an entire point, essentially, and 100 points, whatever. And his on-base percentage goes up, and his average goes up by 31 points in the second half. Now, people will say, that's great. I like that in the second half of the season. The problem is he's not consistent. And if he's coming off a year where, like you said, oh, well, he's hitting well he always hits well in August. He hits 331 in August for his career in 206 game sample size, 992 OPS. In April and March, he hits 248. He hits 258, then 268 in June, then 258 in July. Guys, he's a 250 hitter that has a really good August every year.
Yeah.
And he's injury prone.
This doesn't make sense. So what will your conclusion be if we see an announcement tomorrow that Alex Bregman has been signed to a $150 million contract? My reaction before I pitch it over to you is going to be every dollar that we threw his way, another organization surely can use this, will be wasted, and all those dollars will just be spent just because, rather than being intentional about what you're doing and having every dollar have value. We're the Yankees. We can technically spend. There's no salary cap. But to use money in this way just seems like such malpractice and just such a waste and on brand. Let's be honest. And I've told people, I don't necessarily freak out over the money that we spend, right? You get Max Fried. I think a lot of people were surprised by that number, $218 million, but I didn't really care because I liked the person and the player that they were getting, and stylistically, I thought it made a lot of sense. But Alex Bregman, there's a lot not to like, and then to have someone that's a high risk, gets off to slow starts consistently in his career, for that player to simultaneously be expensive is just lunacy to me. And I'm going to throw my trust in Brian Cashman. I'm not sure why. That
he went underwater again.
I am?
Not anymore, but you just did. But
Are
anyway,
you joking me?
I'm dead serious.
Oh, for the love of God, end this podcast. You are kidding me right now. StreamYard is cooked.
No, you know what I think is happening?
What?
I think your AirPods every now and then are trying to connect and become your actual audio. That's what it sounds like.
Does my voice sound normal?
Now it does, but it seems like it's like fighting in between. Like the Shure microphone is like, no, I'm better than you. But every now and then the AirPod is trying to get in there and be like, nah, fam, I got this.
It's insane work. So have no idea what it's doing. It's probably because I'm touching my ears, and Steve Jobs thought it'd be a good idea to, if you touch your ear, it's going to take over the audio. But
that's probably it. Because, yeah, every time you've done that. Well, I'll say real quick, by the way.
Yeah.
This also just feels like spending money to spend money because people told you to spend money. And Bregman is a 2-time All-Star, which I don't give a rippity doo-dah, as you say. Because All-Star games just mean, yeah, you're a good first half player. And he's not even a good first half player. So It just tells me that he got in because of name recognition. And he's not even that great in the postseason, right? He has some timely hits. Jazz Chisholm is a better option at third. I'm telling you right now. I don't think that they need to go out of their way to pay this guy top dollar to be their third baseman. I think they could have potentially the most explosive third baseman in the league if they give this a shot. I think what they did before we realized it, because remember, we wanted him to play second or center field. We talked about this. And then all of a sudden, Jazz Chisholm is going to start at third. And we're like, oh, he's never played there before. This is going to go south. And sure enough, his range, by the way, last year, 94th percentile. His fielding run value that everyone loves to complain, oh, Jazz just can't play third. Look at all the errors. 84th percentile. So miss me with that. I think people, they'll look at one of those plays that he had as an error and they'll say, Jazz has to be better. Look, he's never played the position before. And I feel like, and we just have not really discussed this, but I feel like you have a potential gem in Jazz Chisholm that you found by just messing around with things. He's been a negative DRS guy his whole career. And then you moved him there. Well, he was a 2 at he was a 5 at second base in 2021, and he was a 2 +2 in 2022. But they moved him to third, and there you go. Like he literally was just even, right? Didn't have to worry about it. So, Gary, the thing for me right now when it comes to Jazz Chisholm is that I think they do have something here if they continue on with it. And I hope to God they do, because I understand he's going to have some of those errors, but more often than not, that range at third base is going to matter a lot more at third than it is at second. I think it's a waste, and I think his arm strength, an absolute waste. That guy is a total cannon. But even worse, you're going to move him to second, taking away his arm strength and taking away essentially that range. And then you're going to go and you're going to pay, and it's not going to be 150, Gary. It's going to be 180 to 200 million. And you're going to have people saying, wow, I wish we got Adames. That's what's going to happen. They are going to pay premium dollar, right, for Bregman if they get him. And he's a better fielder than Adames, but Adames is going to give you 30 home runs. Adames is going to give you some slugging that they don't have. And Bregman just showed you at home, the organization he's played his entire career at, he is capable of having a down year in a contract year. Do you want to bring him to the Bronx where he's never hit well at Yankee Stadium? I just feel like when you put it all together, this is how I feel. It's a mess. Absolutely. It's a mess. There's too much here telling you this isn't going to work out. People hate on the Jacoby Ellsbury thing. What they're doing is using that hindsight is 2020. I didn't think the Jacoby Ellsbury move was as bad as people think. I think now, after the fact, it looks that bad. The Bregman move would be that bad. I'm telling you right now.
Patrick Corbin. Like Patrick Corbin at the time.
Yeah.
You can absolutely justify
I wanted Patrick Corbin. I don't care who knows it.
And then obviously in hindsight, and also, by the way, he helped the team win a World Series at the bullpen. So I don't want to hear he was useless. But here's my conclusion on Jazz Chisholm and where he should be playing defensively. And this will be the last thing we say, and we'll wrap this podcast. I'm going to try not to touch my ears so I go underwater. Now, Jazz Chisholm, I've drawn the conclusion. I drew it months ago. If we're going to move Jazz Chisholm from third base, I'm perfectly fine doing that. Moving him to his home position at second base, he's going to be a better player, probably putting him somewhere where he's comfortable. Just the same as Gleyber Torres wanted to stay at second base as well last year. But having said that, the player that's going to be replacing him at third base, if you're going to move said player, needs to be exceptional. Is Alex Bregman the exceptional player I'm looking for? The answer is a definitive no. I really like Alex Bregman, the person. I like him defensively. I think what he can do on that side of the ball is solid. But offensively, is he the upgrade that I would consider massive, that's a heart of the order bat that I can trust in October, that I can trust in May? The same. The answer is no. So considering that improvement would be marginal at best, I don't move him. Right now, Jazz Chisholm's my third baseman, and if somebody can find me a solution, such as Katel Marte, who would probably end up going to second base, but you guys get the picture. If there's someone who's offensively a massive upgrade, who I really want over at third base, an exceptional fit, then Jazz Chisholm can move. But I don't want to just move Jazz Chisholm just because he made an error in 4 straight games last year in the second half of the year. I understand where people are coming from. He's not going to be right away the best third baseman you've ever seen, but show me a real solution at third base and not just get him out of there and then you can't give me an answer as to who would be there. So that's where I'm at.
So let's officially wrap this with this. All right. There's a little fun thing here for everybody. Oh, we still got a movie, which you will probably look for as I stall.
It's already Googled. Let's go.
So anyway, this is the fun thing that we're going to do. The Yankees went out and got Devin Williams, Max Fried, and brought back Johnny Lowe. They got to add bats. They added 3 pitchers. They got to add 3 bats at least. Go. Who are your 3 that you would add for the Yankees right now, realistically?
Oh, you said 3
it could
bats?
be free agency. Yep, free agency. It could be trade. Realistically, who are your 3 bats?
I think it's realistic. I'm going to go Cody Bellinger, Horner. Ooh. Well, I mean, you have to imagine Jason Dominguez being part of it. You know, I'm going to go with Jock Peterson.
Ooh,
I'm going to go with Jock Peterson on a 1-year contract. Throw his behind in left field. I think Jock can rake, especially at Yankee Stadium. I've loved this fit for a while. Maybe it's a year or two too late. He played pretty well last year. And I think in general, pretty underrated player. I've seen Helsley a couple times in the chat, so obviously there's a fit there. But I think in general, I'm pretty happy with our pen. Yeah, give me those 3 bats. I think I'm happy. And right now, unless there's some mega trade with Marte, then yeah, I would rather have those things. But those are my predictions.
Oh, predictions. Okay. Well, I was saying what you would want. Like realistic.
Well, it would be Marte from Arizona at this point.
Okay. So
Marte
we're in the same boat.
Marte would be the can't miss guy. Am I wrong, guys? Marte would be great.
Marte, Bellinger, and okay, so we got first base taken care of, or left field, depending on how you want to do it.
No Horner in that deal?
I don't. Well, okay, it's if I want it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, I'm keeping Jazz at third. So Jazz, Volpe, and then okay, so what would I do there? I'd go, yeah, this is tough. I don't know, Gary. So you'd go Marte I'd go Marte and Bellinger. I feel really good about that. As far as the next guy, I know I see some people saying Suzuki. I don't think Suzuki is going to go to the Yankees.
Profar, I've seen Profar a few times as well. Profar, I think if you could guarantee you were going to get the type of player he was in 2024, which obviously was a resurgence,
I just don't see it.
I don't see that. I don't see that reoccurring. As much as my mom loved what he was doing in San Diego, I don't see that repeating itself. I'm good.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to do it.
Yep, lay it on us.
All right. So, I'm going to move Bellinger back to the outfield. He's going to play left field. Okay? And I mean, it's not the most ideal defensive, but it's not horrible. So, I'm going to move him to left field. I'm going to trade for Marte, and I'm going to trade for Yandy Diaz at first base. I think Yandy Diaz's bat with Bellinger and Katel Marte, and you actually replaced Juan Soto's production. That lineup is so much better.
That's pretty good.
And I understand some people would say, look, Yandy Diaz is 33. Why the hell are we trading for him? It's a rental. You have to get by this year for Tucker next year. You can't just say, we'll get Tucker next year. They liked Yandy a lot. That trade, they were definitely discussing him and Pete Fairbanks, and it never worked out. But they have interest in Yandy. I don't believe that went anywhere. And I know they liked Isaac Paredes, but I don't think Yandy would cost as much. So, yeah, I think I would go with Yandy, Bellinger in left, and Katel Marte at second. And, I think with that lineup, I think you'd be looking at the Yankees. They could actually make some noise and potentially win the World Series. And this is a guy that has a 341 on base last year. He had a 410 the year prior. Yandy Diaz is really good. Last year was a down year for him, and it was still really good. So that's how I feel. It's not as great defensively. I mean, he's not the best defender. But I think really my focus would be getting that next bat in there that could really just change the game. He doesn't strike out much, doesn't chase, walks a lot, hits for average, has velocity, exit velocity. And I think I automatically think Bellinger is going to have 28 to 32 home runs in the Bronx. I think he's going to hit like 270 to 290. I do. And then I think Katel Marte, well, I mean, the way it's going, he's going to have over 1,000 OPS. And
yeah, every year he's getting better.
He's getting like way better every year. So if you got Marte, man, I don't know where the hell I don't know how you do the lineup. I mean, Marte might even be my 3-hitter, and I might have Judge at the cleanup.
Yeah, by the way, guys, we don't think Marte is on the block. All that we know for certain right now is that they're shopping starting pitching, right? And
it's been rumored that he may or may not be.
May or may not, right? Yeah. And at the time, we had no idea that the Houston Astros would even consider trading Kyle Tucker. We assumed that there'd be a situation where Bregman would walk, and they'd say, okay, well, we didn't spend that money. We'll spend it on the better player. And they didn't do that. They traded him before Bregman even made a decision, which was interesting. But I finally found my movie. And Jake, this is a good one. The movie is Dumb and Dumber. And the reason I went with this movie is, in general, I think spending $200+ million on Alex Bregman would be pretty dumb.
I agree.
I think it would be a massive, can't even say overpay. I just think it would be a poor fit. I'm going to put the money aside. I don't really care about $200 million. It's their money. But for me to say that this is the guy, like the mainstay guy that we got offensively, not to replace Juan Soto, but to kind of help soften the blow, Alex Bregman is not it. That there's no possible way. If you stuck around through a 2-hour podcast, through me going underwater, touching my ears, all of the above, put Dumb and Dumber in the chat. We'll know you were here.
That's about it. We appreciate you guys. Oh, yeah, I will say I would go with Horner, obviously, if I couldn't get a deal with Katel Marte. But that's going to do it. We appreciate you guys. Put Dumb and Dumber in the chat if you stayed around to the end. Another banger stream, man. 2 hours. And I saw you were going crazy when I left to cover the Rams game. So,
I just let it rip. I mean, why not, right?
Yeah. No, I had you on my phone. Like, I was watching it while I was doing the thing. But, no, you guys have been awesome. I mean, we still have over 580 people in here, over 4,000 views on YouTube, not to mention the countless views on Twitter, which, by the way, real quick, before we leave, if you're on Twitter, or right now, if you're on YouTube and you haven't already subscribed, do that and hit the like button, aka the thumbs up button. Lets YouTube know that you like the video, and they're going to push it out because you did. And if you're on Twitter, type in www. You don't have to put that anymore. YouTube.com, and you go over and you search Yankees Unloaded and hit the subscribe button if you like what you heard. We stream kind of all the time now, so hope to see you guys then. You guys take care, and we'll keep you guys updated when we have more information. But I believe that is going to do it.
Yep, and like this video.